My name is Imtiaz Alam. You are here for the Guru Deep Dive session on knowledge governance groups. And we are thrilled to feature Scott Reutter from Mavenlink, who is their Senior Implementations Project Manager, along with Ethan Simon, a Guru Customer Success Manager. These two have worked together to set up a governance group, and they're going to share their awesome and amazing expertise, and we're really pumped that you're here. Like I was saying, on the screen you'll see the Slido code. If you are able to, kindly use the code GDD-GovGroups to answer the question here, which says, at my company, we have blank teammates who understand and help make Guru work for everyone. Things like plan structure for your collections and permissions, or rally other subject matter experts, care about your trust score, all those things. We really want to know, like, who's your crew for Guru? And if it is just you, that is okay. We know that it varies, and maybe you have a big squad of 4 to 6, or maybe you have more, and just choose the 4 to 6 option then. But we'll wait for a few more folks to answer this question. Looks like so far we have 9 coming in. I always think this is so fun to see it live. And if you've been in a deep dive session before, I always give the disclaimer that part of me asking these questions is to make sure that everyone understands and feels and knows that our Guru journey and our Guru instance is going to be different than other people, and we're all coming into these sessions from different vantage points. And so you might have one person, you might have like 12 people, and we're seeing there's 7 or more here in some cases, which is really cool. And if it's just you, that's really cool too. We're all here to learn about knowledge governance groups, and some of us might have an understanding, and some of us might have no understanding of it, and that's totally cool and totally okay. We're all here to learn, and that's the whole idea. And that's just me probably just putting on my instructional designer hat to make sure that we all know that this is a place to learn. And I hope that you will, towards the end of the presentation, or at any point in the presentation, turn on your screen, show your face. We'd love to see you. And at the end of the session, we'll have some time for a Q&A. So please make sure that you stick around for that. After 16 responses, it looks like majority of us have 2 to 3. A quarter of us have 7 or more. Awesome. 19% of us have 1 teammate, and another 19% of us have 4 to 6. Very cool. Let's try out our next question here. This is the last Slido question. And it states, I have a or an understanding of what it means to set up and maintain a Guru knowledge governance group. Again, it's okay if you don't know what that is. Maybe you really know, or maybe it's really unclear for you. That's all right. So your answer choices are high level, above average, decent average, or vague unclear. And to be completely frank, I like seeing vague unclear, because that means you're going to be able to soak up and learn a lot today. And that's what it's all about. Scott's over here clicking high level. He's like, yeah, I got it. I know.
Exactly.
All right. Cool. All right. Over half of us, decent average understanding. This is great. 30% of us, little vague unclear. 10% above average, and 14% above average now, and high level about 5. Very cool. Again, we're all coming at this from a different lens, a different vantage point, and so I hope this demonstrates for you that some of us know and some of us don't, and we're gonna try to figure it out. I'm gonna keep moving forward. Again, please use Slido, throw your questions in there, throw your screen on, make sure you're sticking around for the Q&A. So if this is your first Guru Deep Dive, you might be wondering, well, what is this all about? It came from customers who were asking, hey, how do other customers do X, Y, and Z things? And so that's how this was born. We're going to learn about new features. We're going to see how Guru uses these features. and then you're going to discover how other customers use them. Now, this is a particularly unique deep dive because it's not necessarily feature based. It will be a little bit more around kind of rallying people and figuring out structures, and we're going to get into all that good stuff. But this is the first deep dive where I'm not even going to go into the app to show something about a feature. So if you've been on these before, I almost always do that. Today, that's not really the way it works, but it's going to be really great. And then at the end, it's time to discuss and ask questions, right? There's no stupid question. And if you think your question is elementary, I guarantee someone else has it. Or maybe you're like really deep in this and you have a very high level question, throw it at us, right? It'll be a challenge for me, Ethan and Scott. So here's the general overview. I'll give you a 10-minute kind of definition and some kind of early thoughts and ideas about what governance groups are. Ethan, our customer success manager, will go and take that a little bit further and kind of show you an example. And then Scott will show you what he's done at Mavenlink, and we're pumped for that. And at the end, time for Q&A. Very quickly, if you haven't already joined the community on Slack, please do that. I think Ethan's about to throw those in there. Yeah. And we have our Guru the Gathering event with Gabe from Thrasio, which will be so cool. So please check that out. And then our next Guru Deep Dive is going to be in October on Card Manager. We're working on nailing down a customer for that. If you're interested in it and you are swift with Card Manager and templates and scaling your knowledge base, please send me a DM in the community, send me an email, and we'll get you, maybe we can get you in there. That'd be really fun. So without further ado, almost forgot. Your questions. These are questions that I will not read through, but I want to make sure that we have processed them, absorbed them, and want to make sure that we can answer. If by the end of this call and this session, you haven't felt like we've got to them, please raise your hand and ask that question, or put it in the Slido as well. We want to make sure that we're getting to these. And I think that we have. When Ethan, Scott, and I were putting this together, and I was seeing these questions come in, I was like, yep, we're going to get to these. We're going to get to these. And so if you're feeling like it wasn't addressed, talk to us, please let us know. All right. What is a knowledge governance group? Let's get a definition. It's essentially a group of stakeholders who have a vested interest in Guru. So folks that are already on board with Guru, they like it, they want to know more about it, they want everyone to use it to like the maximum ability. So what do? They determine standards for your team. They build out collection structure and permissions. They establish content creation and some kind of verification flow. They agree on card lifecycle, and they'll also plan for long-term. So that's a little vague. Let's take it a little bit further. Who are these people? We like to call them a knowledge council, and they're essentially a group of representatives from different departments, right? Marketing, HR, IT, et cetera, who meet regularly to maintain Guru at the highest level. So to make sure that your standards that you set, which we'll get into in a minute, are all being adhered to and followed to the best of our ability. This knowledge council can form in a couple of different ways. Sometimes it's top down and management's saying, hey, we think these people from each department could be, kind of like the Guru rep for that department. Sometimes it's bottom up, where, you're bootstrapping and you're tapping some people that are your subject matter experts, and you really want them to get on board, and maybe they have some interest, and you have to, form that organically by people who are into it. And maybe it's a combination. Could be somewhere in between, but we see this happening in a couple of different ways. So how do they function? They'll formalize knowledge content creation and maintain guidelines and make them really accessible, which is so important. Broadcasting, how this works, how this governance group works. They'll make sure that correct usage of your knowledge base is happening. They'll look out for old problems and solve new ones. So here's a little bit of a concrete way to set up some standards and expectations. So that way everyone, authors, collection owners, will know what to adhere to and what your goals are. So everything in green here on the screen is, fill in the blank for you. We just threw in some figures for the sake of an example here, but maybe by collection or for your whole instance, you say your trust score is going to be no lower than 80%. If yours is already at like 90, then you probably wouldn't choose 80, right? You might want to stretch and say 95 after we set this flow up and we have everything working the way we want. We hope our trust score is going to go up. So you can monitor that and give yourself a goal for it as a group. Perhaps your verification intervals can change and be adjusted depending on what the content looks like. It's very different for every Guru instance and customer. You know, is it quarterly? Is it more frequently? You can figure that out as a group together. Your user adoption, is it, you know, or more than 90% of folks that have a seat are using it, right? Hopefully you can set that up for each team and see if you're reaching those goals. Cards that have been left unverified for 60 days will be archived, and that might be the urgency and spark fire that someone needs to get going. Or maybe cards with no views in the past 180 days can be archived. And then that way, again, hey, maybe someone's like, no, I don't want that to be archived, I need to update it. You can kind of tap them to get them there, or they'll see that like, oh shoot, I really need to do that, and there's some accountability there, you know, in a friendly way. There's accountability to be like, hey, we have these goals as a group, so let's try to adhere to them. And a disclaimer here, these are just, you know, five examples of standards and expectations you can set. There's more that you can do. It's up to you how many you want to put into place. You know, maybe start with a crawl, walk, run approach, and maybe do one or two and be like, hey, can we just do these one or two things to start, and then build and build and build. An important part of that is communicating to your team about what these standards and expectations will look like. Part of this presentation in the follow-up is going to provide a playbook for you that's going to be really awesome to walk you through, like, you know, some really detailed some ideas and steps to take. It's like 3 or 4 pages long, so I didn't want to kind of put it here in the presentation because I want to make sure that we're giving enough time for Ethan and Scott to give their input. But I wanted to make sure that I shouted that out. So if you're looking for like, hey, how can I actually like really drill down and do this? In the follow-up, we'll have that for you. So we talked about a lot right there, and you might be like, I'm not even there. I don't have people there yet. How do I get there, right? Think about if there are those people in your company that exist that you can reach. Do they understand content hierarchy, right? These are like your prereqs. You got to know what cards are all the way up to collections. Do they understand how permissions work so that they know how to navigate, you know, who gets to see content versus who gets to edit content? You know, what does delegation and ownership of departmental information look like? You know, sometimes it's shared, sometimes it's, you know, solo. You have to make sure you understand how that works in each department. And then of course, you know, to your team, you know, shout it from the rooftops, like, hey, we're in an asynchronous environment. So like, if we have new members that come on the team, or, you know, we're new departments or whatever it is, we want to make sure that like getting Guru to them is super seamless. So, you know, for example, if marketing needs access to sales, hopefully your collection owners or whoever's responsible for that collection can be like, hey, I know how to make sure that marketing has that, you know, in just a couple clicks, or individuals have whatever they need in a couple clicks, and you can do it really quickly so that way everyone has access to the knowledge that they need. And right now, this GIF right here, I had to put it in here because I am on HBO Max. They just started, now that HBO Max is like a thing, I noticed they had Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and I've started it over from the beginning, and I'm like in love with it all over again. So that's super fun. Okay, with that said, I want to make sure I can kick it over to Ethan so he can give us a Guru on Guru example, and I can stop talking. Ethan, let me stop the share, and I will kick it over to you.
Thanks so much. Hopefully everyone can hear me just fine. Thanks, Imtiaz, for the great introduction. Shout out to Mavenlink, to a couple of my clients I see here on the call, to Brad, to Med. Thanks so much for joining today, and everyone, welcome. Yeah, so today, like, the point really is to take what traditionally in a deep dive format is kind of a feature specific walkthrough and bring it to a higher level to an audience such as yourselves, whether you're power users or administrators. The kind of point of establishing governance groups early is structure first. The tool is really versatile. There's a lot you can do with Guru, and so while training and rollout is a real priority, it's really about, you know, how do we set some content standards? How do we set some knowledge standards across the company so that maintenance is easier, so that delegation is easier? Seeing as though, you know, a majority of folks on the call today, you know, 2 or 3 people are managing Guru for the most part. That's a lot of work. And so how do we, you know, make few people feel like many? How do we implement a structure that's scalable, whether you're a tiny team or an enormous team that's growing quickly? the kind of governance group strategy is supposed to help you no matter what size you are. So I'm going to go ahead and share, assuming everybody can see my screen, and I will present now. Awesome, thank you, Imtiaz. So I'm going to keep it really simple. I'm going to give you kind of the example and the real what's at the meat of setting up governance groups. So principally, establishing governance is about creating coherence between collections, groups, and permissions. And so as Imtiaz so eloquently set the stage, it's not only creating kind of content guidelines and standards, but how do we create a really user-friendly experience within Guru? And the first step, in my opinion, and our best practice, is to start with structure. So we take these kind of building blocks of Guru, the collections, the groups, and the permissions, and we create cohesion, kind of a narrative between them. So there's no gray space, there's no kind of ambiguity as to who owns what, what type of access does this particular audience have. And so governance groups it's all about delegating knowledge, ownership, upkeep, and access. So really, this is the first step. And then as we'll see with Scott's example, it sets the stage for the kind of who, what, when, and why of content creation. So before we're getting to hundreds of cards being authored, utilizing templates and knowledge alerts and triggers and all of our wonderful kind of 300 level features, it's really about getting your feet under you first. So to show this kind of visually, we have closing the loop. And so I've taken a couple selected screenshots from a couple different screens to kind of highlight what this looks like visually. And so, you may see via the Guru Academy or through some of the product training, this kind of collection view in the knowledge tab. And I'll show this briefly in app because I think it's the most effective. But we have, for example, here a client support collection. We can see there that it has a trust score of 97%. We see the number of boards and cards that it has as well. And then the most important part is we have that cohesion. So within the groups tab in our team settings page, we've established from the get-go groups that not only correspond to the collection, so we've got client support groups, which I'm sure many of your teams may already have, but there's also delegated subgroups within that division. And the point of that is really catering your knowledge to particular audiences so that you're able to permission them differently moving forward. And that can really be like the metaphor that comes to mind is like a puzzle or like a plug and play type of model where, your client support agents may not be, authors necessarily, but they may need access to other collections and you already have them as an audience, as a group in the product. And so it becomes as easy as like, allowing that group that you've established, those agents, to be read-only, in client support. Maybe they also have access in your marketing collection. So it makes the permissioning and granting and restricting of access that much easier. And so the kind of last step here is within that permissions level. And so here, if you had clicked over, if you're in your mind like I am in the Guru app, which I'll show, in the collections tab, we have that collection name, client support, and then we see the kind of the closing the loop, taking those groups we've created in tiered models and applying them with permission. So we see the agents have read-only access, our client support content creators, those are the folks who may be authors. And then our client support managers are really owning that collection. Those are the ones that are kind of in charge of the highest level of permissions, as we know the collection owner permission affords. So just showing again visually here, kind of trying to show you that these are all very much connected, but I think I'm gonna pop out of the presentation and hop over into my demo account, again, assuming everybody can see this. But for all of you kind of content managers, the power users out there, if we're in our knowledge tab here, we can see our collections. This much is very familiar to everybody, but to really walk through, this is one of the first things I'll do with the team and what we did with the Mavenlink team, specifically professional service team with Scott on it, is we hopped over to the team settings here. And not only did we kind of align the collections and groups, but we can see here, like to show this visually, we have the client support collection we saw in the knowledge tab. We have the groups here, the agents. We've populated those with all of the agents in the instance or in the company, the content creators and the managers. And this can really be a naming convention that the client chooses. It could be, client support read-only, client support authors, client support collection owners, but to be as explicit as possible in the grouping of these communities or audiences is then going to make it even clearer when you hop over here into that collections tab and apply them. And so it makes it, again, the ability to shift these permissions is really quite easy. To apply them to other collections, also quite easy. So I'm not trying to overcomplicate anything today. It's really the sake of driving home what I think is kind of a fundamental strength of instances that I see succeeding. So without further ado, I want to introduce Scott. I'll stop my share for a moment, but Scott and I have worked together for several months with the professional services team over at Mavenlink, and I'll let him really kind of walk you through. But I think for those on the call, what you'll find especially salient is how we took a fairly complicated use case, because you might be sitting there and saying, okay, it's that simple on a high level department level, but what if I have sub teams? What if I have communities that need some information but not others? And it becomes very dicey very quickly. And so with Scott's team, which had over 7 sub teams that all needed different variations of access to content, that was really the goal here. So without further ado, pass it over to Scott.
Cool, thanks, Ethan. Go ahead and share my screen. That's good to know about the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. All right, so can you guys see my screen? Good, okay.
Yep.
So just to give you a little bit of background in terms of the needs, probably a pretty standard use case for Guru. Obviously, we had a ton of documentation, methodology, and stuff sort of scattered around in various sites, mostly Google sites, which houses most of this information. And before Guru, if you needed to find some of this information, really like what you do is you'd spend time like on Slack trying to find the right person. Once you find the right person, like then they'll kind of track down the information for you. So it's really sort of like taking a lot of time to find this information. And once you actually find this information, it wasn't really clear if these things were up to date or not. So, and then this was sort of our main use case for why we really needed a tool like Guru. And then we started working with Ethan on getting, sort of all of our content structured. So what we did was we basically pulled team members from each of our different groups here. So we have, the business intelligence team, technical consultants, business consultants, solution consultants, project managers, and also the training team. So bringing all those team members together to kind of figure out like, what is all the content that they need and what kind of, privileges and access do we need for all that content. And what we figured out was there's a bunch of content that we have that's really like key for like everybody, most teams within the professional services. A lot of these projects that we manage in terms of implementations like methodology and things like that, that type of content is shared between all of the different teams. But then we also have content that's just specific to certain teams, so like onboarding, things of that nature. So, we work with Ethan to try to figure out, how can we best structure this content? And basically what we did was we created, one collection for professional services, and kind of figured out how we would manage, the content creation and the verification for that. And then also all the team collections. And so we identified an owner for each of those collections. And then we created, just so it's sort of clear, because we kept it open in terms of who can create content. We created, and I'll just show you an example, this card basically, which is a guide, and we created one of these for each of our collections. So this way, it's super clear of what type of content we're creating within that collection and how we're structuring it. So talking about who can create the content, when should I create a card, talking about where it should live, and then we kind of give all the team members an idea of like who can author, who are the team leads, and sort of just like the overall structure. So I think this went a long way, especially when we were onboarding, to help people kind of understand that structure there. And let's see what else. And then so all of those owners that we identified within, sort of we called it, our pilot or beta phase, we kept that team intact, post our go live. And we have, biweekly meetings with all those team members just to make sure that, we're answering any questions in terms of like the structure, and also making sure that we're keeping our trust scores, up to date, and kind of tracking down people that, that we need verifications on certain types of content. So just to wrap that up in terms of the results that we saw, post go live. So, I had a quick check-in with Ethan, kind of looking at our numbers. So we had about a 90% adoption rate within the first 30 days, which was awesome. Obviously, we were able to get a lot of our team members in there and active within the system. And then also our trust score was at 90% as well. So making sure that we're, keeping all that content up to date. And so we're kind of working through and making sure that on a bi-weekly basis, we're keeping that stuff up to date. And yeah, so we've had a lot of positive feedback from all our team members. Everyone's loving the platform. And we have other groups within our company now that are pursuing Guru as well. So just wanted to thank, Ethan for all of his guidance and support on the rollout. It definitely helped a lot. So that's all I got.
Awesome. Very cool. Thanks, Scott. That was it was really cool to see how you guys set up that card for who can do what and when and where, which I hope is something that other folks can grab and maybe say, hey, I want to implement. Scott, I want to ask you a question, if it's all right. When you said that, you've kind of delegated, it sounds like, the responsibility of like tracking down, who needs to update content so you can keep your trust score high, right? Did you,
Mhm.
you or your team, I don't know, are there any tips, tricks that you might be able to share? And it's okay if you don't have anything, but is there anything that you've found is really helpful? Because I'm sure that other folks are probably, sometimes like, man, how do we nudge in the right way without it being a little bit too, forceful or whatever,
Yeah, so within each of the teams, all of the teams have these weekly team meetings, right? And so we're kind of just making sure that all of our team leads, when they're going into those weekly team meetings, that they're adding, that portion to the agenda. So it stays, fresh in everyone's mind on a weekly basis that, hey, here's what's going on with Guru. We have these cards that are up for verification. So just kind of keeping it tracked, and it's kind of nice because since we have everything sort of delegated out, it helps sort of spread the load so everything doesn't really fall on me. For everything within Guru, we can actually kind of delegate that out within all the separate teams.
Oh man, that's really awesome. And so yeah, I hope folks can take that and make that something that is embedded into your governance group if you have one, or if you're thinking about having one, which we hope you are. I'd love to transition to discussion time. So I'm sharing my screen, and from the Slido Q&A, one question, and I think it's also in the Zoom chat too. It's asking, can we configure cards with no views in 180 days to be automatically archived? Ethan, I'm pretty sure you have the response for this one.
Sure, it's a great question. Principally within the product, there is no way to automatically archive cards after a particular date range. That being said, it probably is something we could utilize with the API if that was some work that you wanted to do on your end. That being said, kind of in line very much with the governance group concept, if your team or governance group is meeting bi-weekly, monthly, and you're setting parameters within like the card manager, for example, it is a manual step, but it shouldn't be too much of a lift for removing those cards with no views in 180 days to be archived. So the short of it is no way to do it automatically, unless I believe through the API. Otherwise, I'd recommend with our card manager.
Awesome. Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Ethan, for that response. And as we get into our discussion time here, and we're doing okay on time, we got about 12, 13 minutes left, which I'm excited about. I would love for folks, like I mentioned earlier, feel free to throw in your video and start to ask questions, share your expertise. Like I said before, no question is stupid. You might be like brand new to this, and we saw that some people are, or you might be, have a high level understanding wherever you are. Think about anything we can clarify for you. Do you have new ideas for your groups and your company now after hearing what me and Ethan and Scott have shared? Are there blockers that are in your way? Maybe someone else on the call has figured out the answer to that blocker, or and I bolded it here at the bottom because I know that a lot of folks are wondering, like, hey, if I want to do something that's cross departmental, maybe I need to approach leadership with this in a really clever way. And I'm guessing folks on the call have done this, and so would love to have folks share, turn your video on and feel free, just raise your hand, and we'd love to get some of the questions, discussions going right now.
Hi, I have a question. And I've worked with Ethan before. Hi, Ethan. So the team that I'm on, I'm in the operations department, and we started using Guru first at my company just as a way to help the customer service and collections teams, better be able to do their jobs. And recently, the revenue team has come on to Guru, and we all kind of wanted to come together to create like a knowledge council, but I think that it might be best if we keep it separate, just because there's so many different factions within operations. Like we have the customer service team, we have the collections team, we have the fraud ops team, and there are so many different sub teams within my team that I would like to keep them separate. Is that something that you guys recommend, like just 2 separate knowledge councils, even though we all have one Guru account?
I think that's a great question. Principally, I don't see really anything wrong with that on a departmental level. I mean, certainly there's going to be some high level content that is shared as best practices across the organization, whether that's like card titling or tagging conventions or, kind of the aesthetics of card creation. So those, you may want to meet by, every month or every 6 months with the entire team to say, hey, org-wide or instance-wide, what's the trust score? What's our adoption looking like? Maybe sitting down together with all of those team members and taking a look at those metrics by team and see who's, succeeding in certain areas and where work needs to be done in others. But in terms of having knowledge councils like on a departmental level or on one side of the house versus the other, I think the more the merrier. Certainly like delegating at a team level is also very, very effective. So yeah, to answer the question, I think it's totally fine, but there's also certainly insight and learnings to be had from kind of a very high level meeting as well. Maybe less frequently, but I think both.
Okay.
Oh, absolutely. I was going to add to that. I think that it might be really cool for if you see that one team is doing some things really well to share their expertise there, right? So there could be some cool advantages that happen there. But I would also think about on the flip side, when you're thinking about what your whole Guru instance looks like, maybe you have that breakdown by group, by team. So that way, when you're communicating what's happening in Guru, there could be that little caveat like, oh, hey, there's kind of like, these different expectations in different groups. So then that way, if something does dip, like your trust score, whatever it is, there might be some, some easy answers as to maybe why that's happening.
Okay, absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Any other questions on folks' minds? I'm gonna check the Slido as well.
I'll hop in here.
Yeah.
Hi. Nice to meet you guys. I don't think I've met anyone here. My name's Jen. I work at Better. We have a fairly big knowledge council, and everyone's really excited and on board. And we're very, very lucky. We used to meet bi-weekly when we were launching, and now we changed it to monthly. I would love to know, and I'd love to hear from anybody that has really successful knowledge council meetings, like what you guys tend to go over. We kind of highlight success. We talk about best practices, collaboration, but it's getting a little bit stale. It's been about 6 months now. So I'd love to hear any any suggestions you have for those meetings in particular.
Well, I love that. I'd love to open up to the group if there's any other folks on the call that have some ideas.
While people are thinking, just to piggyback, I'm curious if folks use those meetings to show analytics or to talk about wins, just as like a nice pick-me-up to reinforce like the value of everyone's contributions and work.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys use Salesforce or not, but I just recently ran a report for my manager to show the impact of Guru. Like here was our resolution time, and when we're in support, resolution time before Guru and resolution time after Guru, and it's already gone down within like 3 weeks of implementation. So just showing the return, I guess, on investment.
Yeah, absolutely. Utilizing data. We also do a monthly for like 5 or so collections. We actually have we have weekly on sales, a little newsletter of adoption, trust score, new cards, all that stuff. They really like it. Yasmin, is data something you go over like in these like knowledge council meetings? Do you have is that like a main focus for you? ROI?
Not really, but well, not for me, but I mean, I work for an e-commerce company, so ROI is kind of, what hits you when you walk in the door. So yeah.
Thanks.
I had a question for Yasmin. I'm sorry to kind of steer it away from Jen's question real quick, Yasmin, because with my company, with the CS team, when we first got Guru, unfortunately, response time to customers actually didn't go down. It kind of was sporadic based on the agents, and I'm not sure why that is. And that is something that we do want to focus on when we do implement our Knowledge Council. Maybe we're not tapping into the full potential of Guru. I'm not sure, but I'm interested to see what maybe if you have any tips.
Well, I told them if they didn't use it, I would waterboard them. So there's that. But no, in reality, the situation we were in is we had, 15 different places that people would go for knowledge, and now we just have one. So, there were a few grumblers that had to get used to it and kind of get used to the new workflow creating and searching. But, I'm constantly looking at stats as far as who's using it, what kind of searches people are pulling up, giving kudos to people. We have the Slack integration, so when people create cards, they get a little kudos. So it's just kind of noticing what they're doing and noticing those who are really trying to make it work. And, people love competition, so to speak, or healthy competition. So that sort of approach has really worked for us.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in with an idea. I know sometimes in our Knowledge Council, which I'm not super hands-on, but Julia on our team does a great job. She runs different contests. To Yasmin's last point, just that little competitive edge. I think in Jen, you're asking about how to not make them stale. If there's things that you're focused on, how do we up verification, add a little competition, and then celebrate those folks, those subject matter experts, whoever's on the council, of oh, such and such crushed on verification, that can create some anticipation, some excitement maybe.
Yeah, and along those same lines, the cards that are used most often, finding out who authored those and, giving them kudos as well, saying, hey, your card was used X number of times, so that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I love those. Thank you so much. I like the contests. Love a good contest,
I think people love to get that praise too, especially in a public way, if they, their card has been viewed the most or whatever it is. And this was from the community, and Chris, you might remember this a little bit better than me, but someone just said that they were using fantasy football stats or something in a card. And, Jen, I don't know, maybe that could be a cool way to just do something for a couple minutes in that meeting to be oh, here was his card, and look at everyone who looked at it across departments and stuff like that, just to break the ice or do something that feels a little different, Doesn't have to be fantasy football. It could be anything.
Well, the idea that I'm stealing is from the Guru community, where we have the My Story card, and I'm going to have people create those it's just fun. It's just kind of mixing in fun with the everyday drudge, I guess.
What's the My Story cards?
Well, when I joined the Guru community on Slack, I had to create a card that with a little bit of information about my background and why I'm here and whether or not I use Guru. But just the kind of the questions that were asked, like it asked like, what's your walkout song if you're, speaking at a conference, and just like a few fun icebreaker type questions. But it also enables the team to get to know each other a little bit better as well. So.
And Chris just put the link to the community there, and you can see what those are in the introduce yourself channel. You'll see some of those My Story cards, which are really fun, and we use those at Guru too. So anytime people update those or someone new comes on, you can learn a little bit about folks, which is like really an awesome thing to do right now because we can't all be in a place together. So that can make it really nice. We have 2 minutes. We could probably do another quick question.
I have a quick question, but it's a little bit on the technical side of things, related to groups, and specifically when you have SSO configured and the way IT structure your groups and your departments, it's not necessarily how you want to have your groups structured on Guru. For example, you wanted to replicate this kind of structure of like collection of owners and managers, that kind of thing. So it's completely different. It doesn't necessarily map to the groups that you want. So I was curious to know how you guys manage that, because that has been a challenge in my case, or in our case, and I'm just curious to know how you go around that, because it's not possible to have like your own structure and then some groups SSO and some groups no. You have it or you don't. So just curious about that.
Any folks on the call want to give that one a whirl? It's a really great one.
Are we the only ones using SSO scheme for
No, so we used it with our implementation, and unfortunately we had quite a few issues with it, and my IT person is actually working with Guru support right now to try to get it fixed. So I don't think it's just you. I would definitely recommend opening a ticket for that.
So it's not an actual, it's more about like how you go about like planning. What I did, for example, is we do have SSO, but I don't have scheme, so I can control the groups the way I want it. The downside is that it's not really going to be scalable when we add more groups, and it also requires some manual configuration on my end to determine who goes in which group.
I feel like there is a way to do that, but I honestly didn't set it up 100%. My knowledge person is on vacation today, otherwise she'd be here. But yeah, not sure.
Okay.
If you can, Myrna, pop it in the community in the Slack, and we'll see if we can source a good answer for you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, we're just about a minute over time. I want to thank Scott from Mavenlink one more time for sharing his expertise, and Ethan, thanks, man. Appreciate it so much. And everyone at the end of the call right now with your conversations and your questions in Slido, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Appreciate your time. And yeah, get in the community if you haven't already. We have our Guru the Gathering on September 30th with Gabe from Thrasio, and our next Guru Deep Dive on all things Card Manager on October 15th. So hopefully we'll see you virtually. Take care, everyone.
Bye.